Good morning. Welcome to Real Life on the Homestead in Ontario, and I'm Marie. And today is canning day. Now, disclaimer right from the beginning so that you're not wasting your time and I don't get those comments. This is not an approved method. I am a rebel canner, and if you choose to follow the FDA and the Canadian Food Association and you want to make sure you're doing everything by their book, then you go right ahead. I believe in old traditions, the Amish, the Mennonite, the Europeans. I like their way of doing it. It's tried, tested, true, and I'm comfortable with it. I am comfortable with it. If you're not, then don't do it. Scroll on. This is not for you. If you're interested in what I'm doing, then listen on. But again, I don't want comments about how this is wrong and I shouldn't do it. This is my kitchen, my rules, what I want to do. And you choose what you want to do. If you want to follow all those rules that some body has put out, then go ahead. If you're comfortable with it, do it that way. But what I'm going to do is can some beets. My brother has brought me over these beautiful beets because he doesn't like beets. And he came across quite a few, and he said, do you want them? Because he knows we enjoy them. So of course, I'm going to take them. There is nothing wrong with these beets. They're beautiful. He just doesn't like them. So I'm not going to be making pickled beets because over the years, it seems like my husband's not that much into them anymore, but he does love beets. And I thought, perfect. What I'm going to do is 500 milliliter or half a pint jars and half a quart jars, going between my American and Canadian friends. I gotta go between imperial and metric all the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the skins off of this and I'm going to dry can. I am using my pressure canner, but I'm going to dry can. Why dry canning? And let me explain the whole detail behind it. I'm going to try to be as specific as possible. Number one, you need to peel your beetroots. There is bacteria on the skins. There's dirt in these little crevices. We want to make sure that's all out. The easiest way I find to do that is you put it in a pot of boiling water. As you can see, there's some on my stove already. And I go half an hour to 45 minutes, depending on the beetroot. Half an hour usually does it. I take them from the pot of boiling water into an ice cold water bath in my sink, and then I peel the root. I will go through the process with you. Once it's peeled, I cube it and I put it into my jars. No water. That is what dry canning is you're gonna can it without any water. The reason I've selected to do it this way is I have canned beetroot with water before and I hated it. It washed out the beets. All the, I guess, vitamins, minerals, everything out of the beetroot was in the water, and the beetroot itself was pretty washed out, kind of gray looking, did not look appetizing. And I thought, that's not for me. So I did a little bit of research and found out that the best way to pressure can and can your beets to be the most like in the garden is to dry can it. So I did it and I liked it. I liked it a lot. I have frozen the beetroot, which I had to cook completely and then freeze it. And I found it got a little mushy, took up freezer space, and I'm always avoiding taking up freezer space. I don't want power outages that I'll lose what's in my freezer. And I want to have things shelf stable, on the shelf, open the jar, ready to go. So what I end up doing is I open my jars, everything's cooked, ready to go. All I have to do is pan with some butter, garlic, salt, pepper, and it's a side dish. My husband likes the beets, so I will be doing this mainly for him. I like them too, but I'm more on a carnivore type of eating regimen, so I'm avoiding a lot of the vegetables. So let's get started. Like I said, I have a pot going right now with some boiling water and some beetroot in there, and I will show you how I peel them and go through the entire process with you. So join me today as we rebel can some canned beets. I have my ice water prepared. For me, ice water means running my cold water for about 10 minutes. That empties my pressure tank because I'm on a well. And this water is ice cold. If you're on city water or you're not using well water, I recommend you have a cold tub of water and throw in a bunch of ice. It will make a difference when you are peeling. Now, I am taking my beets out of the boiling water, and a trick I've learned is do not let them sit and dry out once you drain them. Put them right into your water because it does make it a lot easier to peel if you go directly from the boiling water into the ice water. Now let me just grab these out and show you how this works. I like to grab my beet, and first thing I do is, you see the section where the greens grow out of? I cut that off. This section here, because there's all these crevices, that's where you can harbor some bacteria and dirt. I make sure that is for sure cut out. And then I just use my knife to scrape. I don't actually peel in this sense of peeling because I find that's a lot of waste. When you scrape, you're getting that skin and it peels really easy. I'd like to dunk it constantly in my water because that way I see exactly where I am. But you see how easy this is peeling. It's not a lot of effort. And then if I come across any little imperfections, I scrape them off. I seriously love that my brother belongs to a farm share. That means he gets a basket of vegetables once a week and he never knows what he's gonna get. Well, when he gets things like beets, he hands them over to me, which is just perfect for me. I normally grow them the seasons that I feel, well, okay, I need to restock my shelves on this item. I only grow what I need. And this year I didn't grow any beets because I still have some pickled beets on the shelf, but I didn't have any canned beets. So this actually worked out really great for me that he doesn't like them because Jamie does, and I'm gonna get these on the shelf. You see how easy this is peeling? It really is a great method for peeling, honestly. And this is not going to take me very long. I've got another pot of beets on the stove. Oh, did you just hear that timer go off? That means that they've been boiling for half hour, ready to get into the ice bath. Once I've done peeling all these, I'll show you the next step. I have my bucket of beets ready to be processed. And I had started to do a couple and I noticed my lighting was really dark. So I hope it's better now. All I'm going to do is I'm going to cube my beets, and I am going to do this by hand rather than a food processor or anything like that. The reason I'm cubing them is this is how Jamie prefers them. I know some people slice them, shred them, do whatever you enjoy. Again, this is going to be your kitchen and your rules. But all I do is take my cubed beets and I place them in my jar. I'm using, like I said, a 500 milliliter jar, which is half a quart. That's a perfect serving for Jamie. It's gonna work for us. This will go very quickly, by the way. I am going to pack these in pretty tight because as they cook, they will collapse in the jar. One thing I did not mention is that I try very hard to keep the cubes consistent. You want everything to cook evenly, and the easiest way to do that is to have your pieces as even as possible. Now, they don't have to be exact. Like, I'm not asking you to measure out or anything stupid like that. But just eyeball it. Try to stay consistent. Some of them will be off, and that's fine. But as you can see, I am trying to stay as consistent as possible. Well, our jars are all full. I have 16 half-quart jars, 16 500 milliliter jars. And I am going to clean off the rims. Now for the rims, just a plain white vinegar. I actually do half a cup. And I'm gonna use this with some paper towel. Let me reach over. I'm going to just dip in there. And I'm going to clean every rim nice and clean. The reason I'm doing this is I want to make sure that there's no residue from me filling the jars, making sure that the lids can seal. Why did I pour half a cup? Because this is going into my canner. And the reason I put vinegar in my canner with the water is it prevents that cloudy, hazy look on my jars and keeps my canner nice and clean. Now, my lids have been rinsed, well, washed. These are new lids, but if they weren't and they were still in good condition, I'd wash them well. But I'm rinsing them and placing them in my jar. Now, notice that they're not in boiling water and I'm not pulling them out with a little magnet. You don't need to have these hot. People say that it softens the rubber. It doesn't make a difference. And now the powers that be, the canning people, now say you don't even need to do that. When you put your ring on, just finger tight. You want it to be able to release the air and then vacuum seal in the pressure canner. So we're not going to over tighten our jars. You don't want the lid to buckle and you don't want siphoning at the end. So just on there softly, little tight, we're good to go. Now I always wait until I have all my jars filled to see which canner I'm using. Today I'm going to be using my Presto canner because I have 16 jars and they will fit in there. If I had more than that, I'd use my All-American, which is a bigger canner, and I would show you the process with that. But I can get away with the Presto canner today, so that is what I will be doing. And as soon as I have all these rings on my jars, as you can tell, rings, they don't matter because once my jars are sealed, I'm removing the rings and just keeping on the lid. So I'll explain that to you afterward. But I'm just gonna go through, like I said, clean all my jars nice and clean, put the rings on, the lids on, and then we're gonna move outside where I pressure can on my camp stove. We've moved outside. Oh my goodness, it's a glorious day. I am using my Presto canner, and to the canner I'm going to add that half a cup of white vinegar. And every canner is different, so make sure you know the rules of your canner. This is a Presto canner and it has a little mark on the inside as well as I know it takes 3 liters of water, and that's exactly at that mark, to can safely with this canner. Every canner is different. Please learn your instructions. If you, let's say, purchase the canner at a garage sale or used, see if you can Google that make and model and get the instructions. It's a smart thing to do. Canning is not dangerous if you pay attention to the rules. Now I'm going to place my jars. Again, no water, no salt, no acid, and just finger tight. And I'm going to place these in the canner. Now I should show you this because I'm trying to do an instructional video. I'm using a plate at the bottom, and that just diffuses the heat from the bottom of the canner. I'm using my, what is this called? This is called a Camp Chef stove, and it is great for doing this kind of thing outdoors. Now I am going to place all my jars in here. I've got, trying to keep them even. So 2, 4, 6, 8. So there's 8 jars on the bottom. And then I'm going to put in a divider for the next row. And I'll put the other 8 jars in here. Now, if I had more than the number of jars that I've stated, I would have used another canner, my All-American. So I am good here. Now there's a little tab on my canner, and let me see if I could bring you in here. Okay, there you go. You see that little tab? That's where the lid hooks on. I always make sure that I don't have any jars in that space. And simple enough, we're ready to can. I make sure that none of my jars are touching, because with the pressure it will jiggle a little. And bringing over my lid, before we put that lid on, let's check it for safety. First of all, our ring. Is it in good condition? My All-American does not have a ring, so I don't have to worry about that. But with the Presto canner, I do just make sure that the ring's still safe. Then, you see our vent hole? I'm going to look through it and make sure I can see clearly through it. That means there's nothing blocking it. Super, super safe to double check that. And then with this canner, there's an arrow on my handle and an arrow on the lid. It makes it super simple that if you line those up, no effort to close it. So remember, with the Presto canner, that's how that works. This canner is so safe to use. You just have to learn the instructions. I'm going to use my weighted gauge at 10 pounds of pressure for my altitude. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to vent. So I'm going to turn my stove on a low temperature, and I'm going to let it come up to temperature slowly. The steam will start venting. When it starts venting, I'll show you what happens next, because you do need to vent your pot to get that air out of the pot into the atmosphere, creating pressure in here. Once you have that pressure, that's when we'll put our weighted gauge on. So let me get it up to that temperature, and then we'll come back. Now, part of canning is that fear of something happening. You hear about it all the time. Pressure canners blow up. Oh my God. You know what? It's not rocket science. It's common sense, and people need common sense. If you're pressure canning, you're not going to leave your pot unattended. You don't want the pressure to get up too high. That could easily happen when the flame goes too high. The wind can blow out your flame, and then suddenly the pressure drops and you have to start from scratch again. So one of the things I do is, as I'm working in the kitchen, I have my Camp Chef stove set up so that I could just look out the window every 5 minutes and see how things are doing. So I'm in here cleaning up, but I could still monitor my pressure canner, because that's the important part, is being able to see it and check on it every 5 minutes. Now, right now, my pressure is at 0, because I am still waiting for it to vent. Now it should probably start venting anytime, so I'm gonna go out and show you what a clear stream of venting is. Our pot is starting to vent. This is what we need to do, and this little tab is going to come up, which means that there is pressure building in the pot. We have now got a steady stream. I'm hoping you can see that steam coming straight up. We're going to start venting for 10 minutes. The release valve at the back is up. That means that it is now under pressure and we are venting very nicely. 10 minutes and counting. And another feature is, you see this little black tab? That's rubber. If the pressure was too high in the pot, that would blow off and release pressure instantly. So there's a lot of safety features to make you feel more comfortable. Now, see that stream? 10 minutes and counting. Our canner has now been venting for almost 10 minutes. As you can see, that stream is strong. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to use our weighted gauge. I've got mine set for 10 pounds of pressure. If you're in an altitude that needs 15, you'd have another disc on here, and you place that on there. What'll happen is the pot will rise to 10 pounds of pressure. Once it hits 10 pounds, the regulator knows that there's too much pressure in, so it'll jiggle and let a little bit of pressure out, maintaining that 10 pounds of pressure for my area. Once it hits that 10 pounds of pressure, right here, right there, 10 pounds of pressure. Once it hits that mark, then I will start timing for 30 minutes. I'll check this every 5 minutes, making sure that the regulator is releasing pressure and keeping it at that magic number of 10, 11, maybe even 12, but not getting up too high. If it is getting above 12 and the jiggler's going crazy, what I do is I reduce my flame to reduce the temperature. As you can see, as it hit 10 pounds of pressure, the jiggler started to work. That means it's going to be letting out pressure as needed to maintain that 10, 11 pounds of pressure. That's my sweet spot. Now, what I'm going to do is set my timer for 30 minutes. And from here, I will be checking it regularly. Usually about every 5 minutes, I give it a peek just to make sure everything is good. Just to show you, we're 10 minutes in. That temperature, pressure is maintaining beautifully. See how the jiggler's working? Very calmly, just releasing pressure as needed. But it is completely maintained at just past 10 pounds of pressure. And I have got my flame on pretty low. I don't even know if you can see that. Our 30 minutes is almost up, and we've maintained above 10 pounds of pressure for the entire 30 minutes. Now, I should be very clear. If your pressure drops below 10 pounds of pressure, or if in your area you need 15 pounds of pressure, and it drops below 15, then what you need to do is bring it back up to that pressure, and then start that timer again. Yes. You need to start the entire timer again. So if your flame goes out, you run out of propane, the flame was too low and it dropped below 10, then once you bring it back up to your 10 pounds of pressure, yes, you need to start that timer again. You need to maintain those pounds of pressure for the entire processing time. In this case, we're doing 30 minutes. Well, it's it. Our timer just went off. 30 minutes, done. So what I'm going to do, shut off my flame. I am not going to touch that regulator. I am not going to touch that lid. Now, I'm going to be very, very clear here. Do not open this lid. Do not remove the regulator and let it vent out. leave it alone. Just leave it alone. What you're going to do, I'm going to bring this up close here and aim it down. Oh, a little bit too down. There. What you're going to do is, you notice the regulator is slowing down. The gauge will drop to 0. Leave it alone. Let it do its thing. If you were to open the lid right now, it would blow off and probably injure you. Don't be stupid. Like I said from the beginning, pressure canning is common sense. This is under 10 pounds of pressure. Why would you want to release that pressure? You don't want to take the regulator off because you would release the pressure too quickly in there, probably crack your jars, ruin everything you've done. Let the regulator sit there holding the pressure in. The pressure gauge will drop slowly. It'll take a while. It's okay. Go about doing other things. Once the pressure is down to 0, I'll show you opening the canner. Do not open the canner or take off the regulator before it's down to 0. The back will drop. The gauge will be at 0. There will be no regulating, hissing, or anything. It will settle down. The pressure will reduce naturally. That is part of the canning process. So let it do its thing. Now look at that. The top releaser has dropped. The jiggler is absolutely silent, and the pressure is down to 0. This canner can now be opened safely. Now when I open my canner, what I like to do is just release it. Now when opening the lid, I always like to turn it away from me. Let the steam out opposite to your face. You don't want to burn yourself. I take the lid and I let it just sit there for about 15 minutes. The reason I open the canner and let it sit is if you let it cool with the lid on, sometimes that rubber seal gets really tight and it's really hard to remove. Making sure that the temperatures from inside and outside balance. There is no need to rush this. Once I've waited a little while, I'll remove all the jars from the canner. Look at these beauties. Is that not gorgeous? That is so much nicer than washed out gray beets packed in water. Well, thank you for joining me on this beautiful day to dry can some beets. Remember, this is not an approved method. And the way I look at it is things that are not approved methods, it's because they have not yet been tested by the authorities. But they have been tested by our pioneers, the European grandmothers and mothers that have made food for their families for ages. I'm comfortable with this, but you do what's right for you. So go out, live your best life, and we'll see you next time on the homestead. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and share with your friends.